Hi, friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Mental Fitness Unscripted podcast, where our conversation will encourage your healthy living journey. Inspired by our Team Quadzilla coaching motto, healthy living starts between your ears, we talk about mental fitness in ways that challenge us to think about our thinking regarding topics like habits, leadership, exercise, values, marriage, parenting, and faith. Our hope with this podcast is to sharpen you as we sharpen ourselves to be all we were made to be. So let's dive right into the conversation on this episode of Mental Fitness Unscripted.
There you go.
Hey, all right. Well,
Good
good
morning.
morning. I forgot to dress up today.
Hey, it's okay. I overdressed. I worked out in my suit.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so quick story. I'm in California. I'm in a Spartan race. It's 90 some degrees. I mean, it's really hot and dry.
Hmm.
It's in Central California by Modesto, and I'm running along and they've got all this mud because it's so hot. They've got water everywhere. I get
Mm.
I get to this place. It's an 8 foot wall, so I have to jump and grab the top and then climb over this wall. Well, I do that and I get over on the other side, and here's this guy in a three-piece suit. It's a dark blue. He's got a tie on. He's got a vest. He's got the suit jacket, suit
What?
pants, and he's got tennis shoes. Well, they were trail shoes. And I'm thinking, dude, you're my hero if you can run in a suit. So anyway, he was doing a Spartan race in a suit. So
All right.
talking about dressing up. Anyway,
Yeah.
you had a story.
Mine's not nearly as funny as that.
Oh, I had to
But
shake
I
his
I
hand and
wanted to.
congratulate him. I was like,
Yeah, no kidding. That's hilarious. Gosh. Um, I was going to share a little story to follow up our discussion about the Chinese farmer. And of course, this is the story if you missed the episode about, you know, being too quick to judge a circumstance as good or bad. Um, but more like, we'll see. And um, I don't know if I shared on here or not, but last fall I had a kind of a car accident with my little Mini Cooper, and it made a big mess of it, such that the insurance adjuster wanted to total the vehicle. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to total the vehicle. I'm going to figure out how to fix it enough to make it serviceable, and I'll take your check and, do with it however I want. I'm keeping the car. And so that all shook out, and we got a check for less than it should have been. Of course, that's insurance, right? Um, but I elected not to do a bunch of expensive repairs for the car, and I did what I could to it, and it's fine. So we have this extra money, and so at first you would say, well, that really stinks that you had a car accident. And then you could say a little bit later, well, you ended up getting some money for it and your car still works. So that's probably good, right? Well, then I get to have a hernia surgery next week. And of
That's
course, that's a very expensive ordeal, and that's bad.
bad.
And I was able to negotiate with the hospital, and they're like, well, geez, if you can pay cash, we'll give you a 20% discount. And I thought, well, that's a lot better than doing some kind of a payment plan or paying more to do the payment plan. I mean, it was significantly more. And so I talked about it with Angie, and we're like, well, we have the money from the car thing. So now we can use that money, which we weren't expecting to have, to pay for this. And so just kind of in line with that idea that, let's not be so quick to judge a circumstance because we don't know what happens later to shake it all out. And now, as I was writing in my journal this morning, I'm thinking, you know what? Thank you, God, that you could orchestrate an event last fall that would allow us to more or less stress-free pay for an unexpected medical expense and not have to borrow for it or whatever. And it's just, it just works out. And
It
so,
does. It does.
yeah,
Yeah. No, great story. And you're right. We need to be guarded as against being too quick to judge things good or bad. So,
yeah,
and
yeah, it all kind of works out. So,
here again, I'll admit I'm pretty quick to judge.
yeah, I know.
So,
Well, yeah, and I could still say, well, geez, it's a shame I have to use the money for a medical expense and not a vacation. And I can whine and fuss over that, but I'm sure somehow or another the vacation will sort itself out.
yeah, you'll find something.
Yeah, yeah,
You'll find something. Well, cool. I really didn't bring anything to the party today. I
yeah.
mean,
You don't have a big idea that we need to talk about?
no. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff we can talk about, but did you have anything you want?
Um, I might ask you a question.
Okay.
Um, I've been thinking about this idea about um, trials and temptations. So we were doing a study about this from um, the letter of James in the New Testament, and he talks about trials and temptations in that little letter. And we were discussing this in our small group about the difference between a trial and a temptation. And I wondered some of your thoughts about that, if you think there's a difference between the two and what that might look like. And I'll just give you a,
I'm going to say they're both. No, go ahead.
well, one idea is that uh, a trial is something external. It's like an event or a circumstance that's kind of outside of us that affects us for sure. And that's why it's difficult, but it's something that is outside of us. Whereas a temptation kind of originates inside of us. It's a desire or something that's stirred inside of us. And so there's a difference there in kind of the origin, yet they're both trouble, right? And so then there might be different ways to look at how we handle those. But I just thought it was curious that um, oftentimes those two terms kind of get mixed together, but they're not actually the same.
I'm going to agree with you that they're not the same. However, they can be the same. And let me try and illustrate in my head what I'm thinking. You said that a trial is external, and I can go with that. And a temptation is internal. I can go with that too. But sometimes the external will stimulate the internal.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's good. Yes, I'm glad you said that.
Does that make sense? And so
Yes, absolutely.
that's where I come that they can be the same. Plus, if I'm fighting something inside of me, that's a temptation, that's coming from inside, but yet that can be a trial. I mean, slugging through that and trying to make the change.
Yeah,
So I'll agree with you, but at the same time, I think they can overlap. Okay,
for sure.
I am going to call them different, but I think they can overlap.
Yeah.
And so I I hesitate with the external because I mean it's certainly there. I don't discount that it's there. But the difficulty in the trial that I have is how do I respond to what's happening to me?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And you know people that, man, they just crawl through mud and seem to be unfazed. And, you see that. And then you see some people that will actually take their internal and make it external.
Mm,
Well, this guy makes me so mad. And it's like, well,
mm,
you've got control over that.
yeah.
Okay. And that's why I say they overlap is I think most of it is how are we taking that in? And we'll take it back to that story of the Chinese farmer.
Mm,
You know, is it temptation or is it a trial? Well, does it really matter?
yeah, exactly.
I've still got to deal with it, right?
Yes.
I've still got
And
to,
ultimately it's our choice
yeah,
in either circumstance.
right.
Yeah.
And see
Yeah, that's good.
the internal we can have good and bad happen, and the external we can have good and bad happen. And I listened to a guy that I follow. He's in our church, and I followed this guy pretty closely. But he said, "Which way do you face?"
Hmm.
Okay, so if something happens to you, which way do you face? Do I go to a victim mentality or do I take the responsibility of responding to that? Okay,
Yes.
so you take the word responsibility. It's your response, and you're able to
Mm,
respond.
yeah.
Okay, and so we have that innate character inside of us to respond, but I get to make the choice of how I respond. And so I love that question that he posed, which way do you face? So
Mm,
something happens to you, which way do you face? Are you going to become the victim or are you going to become the hero?
yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. I mean, the ultimately what you're saying is that it's all an inside job. And if we're allowing whatever happens external to dictate our mood or our outlook or any of that kind of stuff, then we're no different than the waves of the sea or the leaf in the wind, just kind of blowing around wherever. And
Isn't that
there's
what
that,
Paul says?
yeah,
You
it's
know,
that's a
we're like a ship without an anchor or a rudder, or I mean,
yeah,
we just get pushed wherever the current takes us.
yeah. And there's no freedom there. That's
Mm-hmm.
prison. That's stressful. It's difficult. And so I think for me that this is a great reminder of, the power of the choices that we have
Absolutely,
in all of that.
absolutely.
So,
Now, where we went just now reminds me of another mentor in our religion that I follow pretty closely. He put it this way: he says, "There's things that can be acted upon, or things
mm,
to act." Okay,
okay,
I'll give you an example. My cell phone. Okay, it only does what I tell it to do.
fair.
Correct?
Yep.
My computer, it only does what I tell it to do. And yet, how many people? I must have cut myself shaving. Anyway,
Oh,
how many people blame their computer? Well, the computer must do. And
yeah,
and what we've done by doing that admission is we've abdicated our ability to act upon the computer. And
right.
what we've done is we've pushed ourselves to a victim mentality. So
Mm,
there's things to act. This pencil won't do anything unless I act upon it. And so
right.
there are things to act. Me, I'm a thing, and I can act, and there are things to be acted upon. Now I can write a beautiful poem with this. I can draw pornography with this. I
Mm,
can shove this in somebody's neck.
yeah.
Okay, this pencil will not do anything that without my influence on it.
Right.
And anyway, this mentor, he says, we have to take the responsibility that we are something that acts. And the point there being is that we're blessed with that gift from God.
Mm,
And I really believe that. But anytime we respond to something that's happening to us
yeah.
and make that the fault of the thing that's happening to us rather I mean your car accident, I'm sure you didn't get up in the morning, well, I'm going to make the car have an accident.
Right.
Okay, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that happened. It's an accident, it just happened.
Yep.
But now you have a choice.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you can make that choice and you can say, well, I was in an accident, therefore I'm going to do this. Or, man, that guy was so bad, and
Hmm.
and stupid car, and
Yep.
okay, and the stupid snow. How many people have abdicated their?
Oh yeah.
It's so funny. Oh, it's snowing outside. What a depressing. I mean, well, you've got a choice. You can look at it that it's beautiful and that it's going to bring water so that we can go water skiing this summer and go play in the water and I can drink water and or you can look at it and say, well, this has ruined my whole day today.
Right. Yeah.
So things to act and things to act upon.
No, that's really good. I like that.
Okay.
It reminds me of another idea very much related to that that, that we really need to, I need to say is that um, sometimes we think that we can put off. We don't have to act right now, but let us not be deceived. I'm preaching to myself here 100%. Choosing not to act is still the choice, right?
And it's one of the boldest choices that we can make.
So in depending what is going on, um, that could be solving the problem or adding to it. And there takes some wisdom, I think, to know the difference when to act and when not to act. Um,
Absolutely.
and sometimes I would say for me, I will I will maybe just put it off or think that, let me just wait or let me, I'm afraid or so I'm not going. And yet those are still the actions that I'm still choosing that, and it may or may not be serving um, the right purpose. And so that's challenging.
Yeah. And see, that goes back to how we started here. That's an inside out job. It's not an outside in
Yes,
job.
for
Okay.
sure.
I can go watch Les Brown and get all motivated and still be scared and not do anything.
Yep.
Okay. But what
Yep.
I've done is I've abdicated to Les Brown to motivate me.
Mm,
When in fact, I should have him inspire me so that when things come, I can
beautiful.
motivate myself.
Yes.
Okay. And Les
Yep.
Brown's awesome. But what I need to do is I need to put that inside of me before the thing happens.
Hmm.
And then I can make
Yeah.
a decision and motivate myself. Anyway, that's how I see it is that we have a choice and
Hmm.
we can take that pause, and just take a breath before you react to something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
And is it good or bad? Well, you better make the decision. I'm going to be the one that acts instead of being
Right.
acted upon.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't help but to go back to the idea we seem to beat every other
I know.
time
Here we
about
go.
our identity, right? And who we are. And I just really love this idea that comes from Atomic Habits, where he says, you know, be the type of person who, and to think about that in driving some of the choices that we make. and just being aware of that. I think so many times we get into these stressful trials or temptations or whatever, and we're not processing any of it. We're just kind of, the leaf in the wind type of thing. And well, this is what's happening. This is what I'm going to do. And you don't really think about it. But gee whiz, if I can just pause for a moment and say, you know, what what is what kind of person would get through this circumstance in a positive way? Well, somebody who's going to do these things. And then it's like, well, if that's the kind of person that I want to be, then let that kind of drive my choices versus being a leaf in the wind, which is how I can get to feeling sometimes when it's hard, you know. So I just really like that idea of if that's who I am or who I'm trying to become, then that helps me to make better choices, I hope, when there's trouble.
And back to, sit down with the pencil and pen and say, who am I? And answer
Yeah,
the question. And I mean,
exactly.
really, really put some thought to it. What values do I hold? Um,
Right.
when the Stoics called it a pre-mortem, and I won't use the Latin here, but
Yeah. Yeah,
instead
we had a good conversation about that a while back. I
we
love that
did,
idea.
and
Yep.
and the post-mortem, we usually look at things and go, why did that happen? And we tear it apart. But why not? It reminds me of an old story I heard when I was a little kid. I remember that just a short story about this no, I was an engineer, a train engineer. And one night he was going along, and up ahead he could see that a train had tipped over and derailed in front of him.
Mm.
And rather than hit the brakes, which would be what we would normally think to do, right? Stopping a mile-long train, yeah, on
Yeah.
steel rails, that just doesn't happen. But he hit the throttle full speed, and what it did was it moved the train that had derailed, and he basically he had to stop eventually, but it hit the trail and moved, or the train, and moved it off of the tracks so that he was able to keep his train on the tracks. And they asked him, well, how did you know to do that? And he said, I had pre-thought this, what if
Mm.
this happens? What if this happens? And I know people try and avoid that. And I'm not abdicating that we live in a place that, oh, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? Don't live there. But
Yeah.
but if there's a situation that you're anticipating, go there and then answer the question, what would I do? See,
Yes.
this train engineer, he didn't stop at, oh, that would be bad. He went on and said, okay, that happened. What would I do?
Right.
And he had thought it through so that when it happened, it was just natural. The astronauts in the 60s during the Apollo program, they put them through such rigorous training that they would go through all the scenarios. I don't know if you ever watched Apollo 13 with
Yeah, I remember that.
great movie.
Hmm.
Um, those astronauts that when they most of them when they launched the rocket, their heart rate didn't even go over 100
Mm.
because they had been through that scenario so many times in training. Even though that was the first time they'd strapped that rocket to their back,
Yeah.
it didn't even hardly phase them. So, uh, just have that pre-mortem. What's the worst thing that could happen, and what would I do about it?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
don't just don't stay there.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
That's true. It could be discouraging to
Well,
live
it
there
can.
for sure.
Yeah, if you look at everything, what's the worst? Well, and you can go down
Mm.
that vortex pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
if you'll take the posture that, okay, I'm going to act, and whatever happens, this is how I'm going to act. And then you can look at the situation and say, okay, what's the worst that could happen here? What's the best that can happen here? I'll plan for the worst and expect the best.
Right. Good.
And then it's no
S-
surprise in the middle.
That's right. So, if you could think of if you could think of a recent um, trial or temptation that you had to wrestle with, what else do you do to work yourself through that? Anything in particular that's kind of,
I'm a big proponent of tracking things that I'm not good at. Um, so I'll decide what behavior I want to do, and I actually have built my own. I'll just show it to you. I've actually built my own thing to track that.
oh, okay.
Okay. So if let's say one thing I'm working on right now is I call it my bookends. So I have a morning routine and I have an evening routine before I go to bed. And what I've found is if I do the evening routine, the next day goes just so smoothly. I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of like what I was just talking about. Okay, what's my day like? What would take me off of track? What things do I really want to accomplish? I mean, what are the non-negotiables that I need to accomplish? And then I plan my day out before I go to bed, so
Okay.
that way I'm ahead of the day coming. Okay.
Right. All right.
Well, the problem I face is that there's television, and I have worked really hard, and I'm really tired, and so I'll sit down, and pretty soon I find that it's 10 o'clock, and I should have gone to bed at 9:30, and I drag myself to bed, and I get up in the morning and think, oh, I didn't plan my day, and what am I doing today? And then I find that I'm just kind of running behind. So if that's the thing that I'm trialed with is planning my day, I'll put it down here, and I check at the end of the day to see if I'm doing those things,
Hmm.
which is dangerous because that's when I'm supposed to check and make sure I'm doing those things,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
anyway, that's what I do is I track those things that I need to change my behavior on. My morning routine, I had to work through that, and I would track that, but I've got that to where it's almost a you talked about Atomic Habits. What a great book, by the way. If you haven't read it, go read it.
Yeah.
It'll change your world. But it's become an automatic habit. And so what I've learned, I actually took this from Atomic Habits from James Clear's. I've attached my uh, closeout of the day to another habit that I already have.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So that
Yeah.
habit stacking that he talks about.
Yes. Right.
So I've attached that, and I'm knocking on wood here. It's working pretty well. So that's what I do is I find a way to track it and make it
Yeah.
conscious. Because if I just say, well, I'm going to go to the gym this week, man, what does that mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Everybody says that.
And we've all done it.
Right.
I'm going to close out my day every this week. Okay, well that's
Hmm.
great. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So, attach it to something else. One habit that we all have, and I hope that we all keep it for a while, but we get up in the morning, our eyes open, and we get up, right?
Yeah.
So attach something to your get up. Okay. Oh
Right.
man, I'm awake. Oh, I better put my tennis shoes on.
Yeah. Time to exercise.
There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah. So, you just,
Yeah.
I must have cut
Well,
my,
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful because you're being very intentional about how you're spending that time and energy. So, one of the things that James Clear would say is that um, related to trials and temptations, he doesn't talk about that specifically in the book, but what he does say is about self-control. And I think those two ideas very much go together,
I think they're
self-control
the same thing.
and your temptations and your trials. And what he would say is that um, people who we would say have a lot of self-control are really no different than us.
No.
It's just that they are able to avoid the things that kind of cue up the trial or the temptation. And one way to do that is to be very proactive, like you are, in planning ahead and having a routine and um, making that be how you start the day and how you end the day. And that by itself, I think you would probably agree, keeps you out of a lot of trouble.
Right. Yep.
And and then now all of a sudden you look like a guy that's got all this self-control and you know, I
I've got it
mean,
all
it's
together,
really,
man.
I mean, it's magical in a way because it's so simple and there's not anything, um, yes, it's still hard to do because it's a discipline, but it's not like anything special. You know, anybody can do that. We just have to decide to do that
Yeah, Jim.
because we're saying this is part of who I am. I'm a self-controlled person. I'm a disciplined person. What do disciplined and self-controlled people do? Well, they don't go and put themselves in situations that are going to test them in a negative way. And they're proactive and they're planning such things. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was thinking about with that idea because it's we're going to be tempted.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
can't avoid that. So
No, it's
lest
just
anybody say that they're a bad person because they're always tempted, that's not it at all.
no, that's
It's we're
wrong.
all being tempted.
Yeah, temptation is just it's just happening, okay?
Yeah.
It's what you and I do with that temptation. Do we give it
Yes.
space? Do we act upon it?
Right.
Then that's where we start to have problems. But the
Yes.
temptation itself, no, you're not evil. You're not bad. That's just part of life. Um,
Yeah.
I love what you said. I heard it put the other day. In fact, it was Darren Hardy. He said, "Decide what you want, decide what will derail you, and then write a don't go there or a don't do list."
Mm,
And it was based off of Steve Jobs' thing, where um, he was most proud of what they didn't do more than what they did do, and it's because they
right.
were
Yes, I
putting
remember
all
that.
the right. They were doing the leveraged things, and so he would make decisions to not do these other things. And I think that's what we've got to do is decide who we are, what would derail us. Make a list of these things. Who am I?
Mm,
What would derail me from that? And then write that don't do list. If I'm having trouble drinking, don't go to the bar.
exactly.
Don't go to
Yeah.
the beer cave at the local grocery,
Yep.
whatever it is. For me, one of my don't do's is I don't watch television at night
Mm,
before before I close out my day. So
beautiful.
that's my goal.
Yeah.
So
Man, that's so good. Fantastic.
I'll attribute that one to Darren Hardy. He came
All
up with
right.
that one.
Yeah.
So
I like it.
well, less than a minute. Anything else?
No, this is good. Thanks for sharing some story there and letting us behind the curtain at Todd's house. It's super helpful.
Yeah. Well, good luck Tuesday,
Yeah, thank you.
and our prayers
Have a great week.
with you and Angie. So
All right.
thanks,
Likewise.
Chad.
Yep.
Take care. Have a good
All
week.
right. You too. Bye, Todd.
Bye.